Mga planning.
Welcome. Okay na?
Mm. Oo.
One, two, three. Welcome, classmates, and Ma'am Maxi Duarte in our presentation today about the morality of human act and moral accountability. We are the Group 1 presenter. I am Kay Angelici Trania, and I'm with my group members, Ara Scorpion and Oniria Ofloa. We have four parts of our report. First is the what is human act? Second is what is an act of man? Third is the determinants of the morality of human acts, and the last is the modifiers of human acts. So what is human act? Human act is an act which proceeds from the deliberate free will of man. So it means na ito yung mga voluntary actions, it is an intended human acts. Ito yung mga gawain natin na galing sa ating will or with voluntariness. Like telling the truth, going to work, finishing your homework, giving money to the poor, and returning a lost item. So to be considered as a human act, the following elements must be present. There are three elements: knowledge, freedom, and voluntariness. First is the knowledge, means that the act is done in the light of the agent's knowing faculty. He is aware and conscious of what he is doing. He knows what the performance of his act means. So it means no, the agent is aware, awareness sa bagay na ating ginagawa. We are aware of what we do in our life. So, second is the freedom, means that the act is performed in accordance with and not against the will. It is under the control of the will determining the action. In other words, the power resides in the will to choose to do or not to do an act. It is, therefore, a free act done without any element of force or coercion. So this freedom is for kalayaan. Now we are free to do what we wanted to do. Ikaw ay malayang gawin ang bagay na gagawin na or gusto nating gagawin. So the third is the voluntariness, means that the act done by the agent is intentional. When he voluntarily performs an act, the agent intends it as a product of his decision, which is within the power of his will. In other words, a voluntary act is a willed act, an act that is willfully done. It proceeds from the employment of knowledge and freedom. The agent cannot voluntarily do an act if he does not know it, it in his intellect. He also cannot voluntarily do it without his freedom. Voluntariness takes place only when knowledge and freedom are present. In other words, voluntaries is yung mga gusto nating gawin, yung mga bagay na gusto nating gawin. Like eating a cake, riding a bicycle, and walking. Now, there are two types of voluntariness. First is the perfect voluntariness, with full knowledge and full consent of an act imperfect. Thus, so this perfect voluntariness is with full knowledge and full intention in doing the act. And the imperfect voluntariness, there is no perfect knowledge nor consent. And we also distinguish between direct voluntary act and indirect voluntary act. So this direct voluntary act, when the act is intended for its own sake, either a means or as an end, and the indirect voluntary act, an act which is not intended for its own sake, but which merely follows as a regrettable consequence of an action, direct, balik, indirect, wait, ikapra, oh, bakit doon ko ginawa dyan? Indirect voluntary act, an act which is not intended for its own sake, but which merely follows as a regretful consequences of an action directly willed. So the examples of Balik na lang po. So we also distinguish between direct voluntary act and the indirect voluntary act. So the direct voluntary act, when the act is intended for its own sake, either a means or as an end. So the examples is like cutting classes, willingly goes to a bar. And the indirect voluntary act is an act which is not intended for its own sake but which merely follow as a regrettable consequence of an action directly ill. So example is um, hold upping and asking for money when you go to a bar for a drink and you end up in a fight. So these events or actions may not be intended, but they occurred nevertheless.